It's cool to see anybody transform, but when you see a man that's hard and rugged and just lost, and you see him transform, and you see him start going to church, and you see his body changing and his mind changing and just all this stuff, it's an amazing thing.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Journey to Freedom podcast, where this year in 2024, we are introducing and we are talking to and we are just engaging with 100 Black men. And it has just been, for me, we're hitting the 90, type thing when we're around at 90 episodes right now. So I got to do 10 in the next, before December's over. But it has just been, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet, because when we think about success and we think about what drives success and what does it mean to be success, a lot of people think it's the cars we drive or the houses that we live in or the material things that in our society we've equated. When you see videos and you see, what we look at as success, sometimes we don't feel like we're enough, or we don't feel like that we match up. And what I found out by doing all these interviews is we more than match up. There are so many great men that are out there that are serving people. That same prayer that I say every day, that Solomon's prayer is, "Dear Lord, give me the wisdom to do the things you put me on this earth to do in a way that pleases you and serves others." And what I'm finding is we're able to serve others in so many different ways, and so many people in different walks of life, whether they're accountants or they're, actors, or they're, athletes, or they just do landscaping in the community and make a big difference. It is huge to be able to see, one of the themes I was just telling Tywin about before we got started is, a big thing that's happened, if this is your first podcast that you're watching, is being able to see others that look like us doing what we do in the community to make a difference, and knowing that, oh man, I'm not alone doing this. We talk a lot about barbershop talks, and what are the things that we talk about when we go to the barbershop, and how it's starting to evolve into more meaningful, and not that talking about your favorite actor or athlete, or it's not fun to do in the barbershop or talk trash talk. But when we start thinking about, well, how do I treat my wife? How do I treat my kids? What do I do when somebody's hurting, or what do I do when I'm hurting and I don't feel like I'm getting things done? We're starting to have some of those transformational conversations, and that's what the Journey to Freedom is all about. Is making sure that we can get. Tywin, I'm going to take a group of Black men, and I'm hoping to do it 4 times next year, but we're starting out at the end of January, and we're going to go down to Alabama. We're going to go start out in Birmingham, then we're going to go to Selma, then we're going to go to Montgomery and do the the Equal Justice Museum, and we're going to talk about story and talk about when we come back and how do you be a leader in your community. And so just some really fun things to be able to do in this space. And so my guest today, Tywin, is on, and he's in the health and fitness in the arena. And that's one of our, pillars is, if the average Black man is living to 72, the question is, why only 72? And then what are we doing, or what are we not doing that puts us back there? And I think part of it is our physical health and the things we put in our body. And hopefully he'll talk a lot about that. And then some of it is our mental health. I think our mental health can destroy our physical health so fast if we're always stuck, or we're stressed out, or we're believing we're not enough, or we can't do stuff. And so thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend time with us, talking about these issues. As I tell each of the guests, I want you to start with your story, because I think our stories are so important. You can start wherever you're from, your mom's womb, or you can start, later on in life, but whatever it is, I can't wait to talk to you about your family. I can't take to know about health. I can't talk to you about what it's like in Florida. I'm in Denver. We just had snow last night. He's in there in the sun. I'm going to go back to Orlando in the first part of January, so I'm going to make sure we hook up and we spend some time together. But go ahead, please tell us your story and what you've been doing in your life here.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for having me on. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. And I'm in complete agreement with what you said. Of stories are so powerful.
Mhm.
They're so powerful. And I hope every one of the listeners that are listening and listen to this understand your story is powerful. And for a
Yes.
long time, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand it. I didn't think there was anything special about me. But over the course of my life, I've realized that, man, everybody has a story, and we're so much more connected than we think if we
Mhm.
start sharing our story. So I just love the idea of what you're doing with the podcast here, and kudos to you for that. So I'm excited.
Good.
So I'll start right from the beginning. I think that's actually a great place to start for me, at least, because when I came into the world, I was born a drug and alcohol addicted baby. So my mom was a prostitute and a drug addict. So I immediately went right into the foster care system. She just wasn't in a place where she could take care of me. She couldn't even take care of herself. She had 13 children. Some of them ended up staying with her, but a lot of us got put in foster care. And for a long time, I held resentment, and I'll get to later how I got over that. But for a good part of my life, I held some resentment for that. Luckily, I was adopted very early on, so I didn't spend much time in foster care whatsoever. I had a wonderful family that adopted me. I have three sisters, three brothers, so there were seven of us all together, so a huge house. But the one thing that was different was uh, I was adopted by Caucasians. And, growing up, it was awesome. My parents were the best in the world. My brothers and sisters were the best in the world. But through that process, I had to figure out who I was. I had
Mhm.
to figure out what I stood for. And I'm very grateful from the time I was little. My parents never hid anything from me. And sometimes I'll hear about, people who adopt kids, and they kind of wonder, like, should we tell them we adopted? Like, should we explain the situation? My parents never hid anything from me, and any questions I had, they always answered. So I was super grateful for that. But growing up, I started off, I was going to an all white school, and my mom noticed she didn't like that. So we actually transferred schools. Then I ended up going to an all black school, and the only white kids were my brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's just how my mom was. She was always looking out for me, always looking out for my brothers, always looking out for my sisters. And it was just a family where everybody got along. Um, and it was just wonderful growing up. But as I got a little bit older, I always yearned for attention. And I'll never forget, I was young, I was playing like flag football. And I remember we won a game, and I remember looking over at my dad and how, like, proud he was. How it was just a to me, it was just a flag football game, but he was so proud, and he was jumping up and down, and like immediately it clicked with me. I was like, oh, if I get good at sports, then I can get attention.
Mm.
So very quickly I was like, okay, I excelled at all sports, and I didn't excel because I was born with this magical gift. I excelled because I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it at a very, very, very young age. I was playing 3-on-3 basketball tournaments. Now I'm currently residing in Orlando, but I grew up in Michigan, so
Oh,
basketball is really big up there.
yes.
So grew up playing 3-on-3 tournaments and basketball tournaments, and by the time I was in fifth grade, I was 6 feet tall. So I was a tall kid. I was dunking in fifth grade. So I just knew I was going to the NBA. The doctors told my parents I was going to be probably like 6'8" or 6'9". The problem with that was I didn't grow anymore after fifth
Mm.
grade. That was it. So
Yeah.
by the time I hit eighth grade, there was no more growing happening with me. So the football coach actually came over and he said, look, he said, you can play basketball and maybe, get a Division II scholarship, but if you come play football, I guarantee I'll get you Division I scholarship. And that sold me.
Oh, of
It
course.
sold
Yeah.
me.
Wow.
So I started training for football. I gave up my love for basketball, and I just really took a liking to football. And the thing about football was, as a young child, I had a lot of aggression. I had a lot of anger issues that I just didn't know how to deal with. And I think for a lot of men, we deal with this. We don't know how to control our emotions. We hold them up inside, and a lot of times, it's outlets that we use that aren't beneficial and aren't in our best interest. And that's what I would do. So football was a way, it was an outlet that I could get rid of all that anger and frustration and not end up in jail or anything like that.
Mhm.
So very quickly I started excelling in football, but I still was struggling. I struggled a lot with insecurity issues. I struggled a lot with finding my identity. And I think a lot of people deal with issues as a teenager. You're trying to figure yourself out, but it was really rough for me. It was almost like I lived a double life. So
Hmm.
on one end, I was the star athlete, got good grades in school. But on the other end, I would leave doing all that and I would be hanging out on the street. I was hanging out with kids much, much, much older than me. I started drinking at a very, very young age. And I started going down a bad route. And when I was in seventh grade, I'll go back just a little bit. When I was in seventh grade, I ended up, and I don't think I've ever shared this on a podcast, but I ended up getting molested.
Oh, wow.
And for a long time, I didn't know how to process it because I didn't get molested by a male. I got molested by a female. So for
Hmm.
a long time, I never said that because it's almost like a double standard. When it happens to a female, it's one thing. It's horrific. But as a man, it's like, okay, well, what's to be mad about that? Well, the problem was I was 14 years old and I didn't know what I was doing. And
Mhm.
when that happened to me, it instilled this like lust for women. It instilled this mindset that I didn't look at,
Mhm.
sex the same way. I didn't look at women the same way. And that stuck with for a long time. And as I became an adult, and I'll talk about this in a second, I had a lot of issues getting around that. I had a lot of things that that held me back. But so after high school, I ended up getting a Division I scholarship to the University of Central Florida. So I went off to play right here in Orlando. Had a phenomenal time playing. I had a great coach. And through this time, I want to say this because there might be some teachers and there might be some coaches that are listening to this. And if it wasn't for teachers and coaches, I would not be here today. I guarantee I would be dead or in jail. Hands down, without question. And a lot of times, teachers and coaches, they don't get the credit they deserve. They definitely don't get paid what they deserve. A lot of times they don't get the recognition. A lot of times their students or their athletes, they never come back and thank them or tell them how much they impacted my life. So anytime I get a chance to, I always tell and give a shout out to the teachers and the coaches because the impact that you guys have on people's lives, it's just phenomenal. So when I went to college, I started playing football and everything was going good, but I was still, again, I was living this double life. So
Mhm.
over here, I was this athlete, doing everything, training, but over here, I'm going out, partying, girls. It's just wild. And as an athlete, especially when you're a high level athlete and you've been good your whole life, get used to you get used to people giving you whatever you want. So
Mhm.
sometimes like people that never lived that life, they'll see like this is why you see professional athletes do what I think normal people would call like stupid stuff and be like, why would he do that? That's so dumb. Well, it's because you're used to getting away with stuff at a very young age.
Mhm.
I was constantly getting out of stuff my whole life. I remember when I was in 8th grade, I got into a fight with a kid, slammed his head against the wall on the school bus, cracked his head open. He was bleeding all over. And his parents pressed charges on me. And I was facing time. I was facing jail time. Now, again, this was when I was in middle school.
Mm.
But the middle school principal was also friends with, he was on a basketball, he's one of the basketball coaches. So I got off. So my whole life, I was used to getting off with stuff and getting off with stuff. And this is not right. I'm not proud of this. It was
Mhm.
just like, this was the mindset I had. So I was partying and drinking. And now keep in mind, and I skipped this part. I want to go back because it's important. I had my first child when I was 17 years old,
Okay.
right? So I'm 17 years old, have my first child. At that time, so I was playing football, had my first child on the way. I was selling drugs. It was just a whole bunch of nonsense going on. So depending on who you talk to, would know, oh, this is Tywin, or no, this is the version of Tywin, or it was different for everyone.
Mhm.
And it was because I was seeking attention from any and everybody. So who I was hanging around, it was a slew of different people. And I just had this in me to please everybody. So if when I was hanging out on a corner, hanging out with people who sell drugs, well, you please them by selling more drugs.
Mhm.
If I was playing football, you please them by making more tackles, winning the game. If I was in school, it was by getting good grades. So I was constantly in this like dopamine spiral of just like, okay, how can I get more attention? How can I get more attention? How can I get more attention? And when I was in college, that was probably, I kind of had my first like, okay, you're off track. And it's kind of sad even saying that. It took me to the time I got in college, my sophomore year. I was like, okay, you're off track. You're not doing the right thing. And I had 2 kids at this time. And, I made the decision like I need to own up to my responsibilities. And I need to start taking care of my kids. Because when you're in college as a Division I athlete, if you're on scholarship, you can't work.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have to take care of my responsibilities. This is something that I did. Well, I have to take care of my responsibilities. So I walked away from my Division I scholarship. My parents were furious. Everybody was furious. Everybody was, how could you do that? But I did. So I went into the real world, started working. First job I got was a sky cap at the airport. I absolutely loved it. I just developed this love for people. I developed it, especially at the airport and, in Orlando, so many people coming and going and so many personalities and so many cool stories. I just met some amazing, amazing people. So I did that for a while. And then I ended up going to sell cars, which I think everybody should get some sort of sales job.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sales it's such a pivotal thing. It's such a great thing. I know a lot of people are scared of it in this or that, but everybody sells. So got into selling cars. I absolutely love that. I did that for a couple years and made some great relationships in that. I think my biggest takeaway from that was, again, learning how to sell and how powerful it was to help someone make a decision. And really, that's what sales is. You're just helping someone make a decision.
Yeah.
And so after I was selling cars, the biggest thing with that was the time. It took so much time. I couldn't spend any time with my family. At the time I was married and I was working. I was scheduled 60 hours a week, but usually was 80, 90 hours a week. So you're constantly working. So I ended up switching jobs. I ended up starting to sell insurance. And at that point, then I dropped down to 40 hours a week and I didn't know what to do with my time. But this was the dream job that, everybody that they tell you you're supposed to get. And, the matching 401k and retirement and the pay was good and commissions were good. But I remember sitting in a cubicle and I looked to my left and I looked to my right, and both those people had been there over 20 years. And every single day when I came in, they would talk over me and they would complain every single day, complain about how much they hated the job, complain how much they hated their life. And then one day I just said, do I want to be in this position in 20 years?
Yeah.
And again, it was like this second like aha moment in my life where I was like, something has to change. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but here's what I did know. I didn't want a boss. I don't like people telling me what to do. And, I had been hearing about this entrepreneurship thing, owning your own business. And it sounded cool. I had no idea what to do. I'd never owned a business in my life. No one in my family's ever owned a business, but I'm a big believer of, well, if another man can do it, then I can do it. So I ended up walking into my manager's office. And I remember this because I had to do this a very specific way. So I went into my manager's office and I told him, I appreciate my time here, but, this isn't for me. If you need me to put in a 2-week notice, I can, out of respect for you and the company and everything you guys done for me. But if you don't need me, I would like today to be my last day. The reason I did it like this is because I knew how I was. I knew if I put in my 2-week notice, that left that door open and I could always come back.
Yeah.
And I needed to sever it. Anytime I've ever made a pivot, I've always severed it and gave me one direction. Like I've made a clear-cut decision. This is what I'm going to do no matter what. Nice. So he tried to tell me, are you sure? Like you should probably put in a 2-week notice. You're doing this whole business thing. He's like, I'm sure it's going to work, but just in case it doesn't, you have something to fall back on. I was like, no. So he's like, well, we don't need you. So, okay. So the very next day, I remember waking up and completely freaking out. First
Oh,
time in
yeah, yeah. No plan B, right? This is it. Oh, I love
first
it.
time in my life I ever had a panic attack. And I call
Okay.
my mom
Mhm.
and I'm like, Mom, like I messed up and da 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 da. And my mom was hardcore.
Gotcha.
My mom was the hardcore one out of my two parents. And she said, she just sat, she let me talk. And she said, you figured everything else in your life out. Figure this out. And she hung up on me.
Wow.
Yes.
No
And
crying
me
on
and my
her
mom have
shoulder.
a great relationship, by the way. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
like,
It sounds like
oh,
it. Yeah.
no, she knew.
That's what you needed. Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I said, okay, we're going to figure this out. So I ended up getting into real estate, which was awesome. I knew nothing about real estate. But again, I'm a big believer of if another man can do it,
Mhm.
then I can do it. So I was like, okay, what's the first step? I went to and they have an investor club down here. So I walked into this investor club and picture this. So I walk in, I'm a young black guy dressing like a young black
Like,
guy. And I walk in, it's a room full of, just so you kind of understand and paint a picture like married couples between 50 and 65, white, like, and it's like you would think like the music stopped as soon as I walked in.
uh-huh.
Everybody's head turned is just looking at me. And I just march right up to the very front and sit in the front because I've always learned, like, learners
Yeah.
sit in the front, sit
Yeah.
right down in the front. So everybody goes back. The dude on stage begins speaking again. And within like 30 seconds, I raised my hand. I had no idea what he was talking about. So I was like, excuse me, I don't know what that is. And he
Mhm.
explains, what he was talking about. And then he goes again, probably a couple minutes later, raise my hand. What is that? Can you explain that? And I hear everybody like chuckling and laughing because they're like, this idiot, he doesn't know this. This is basic stuff. And then a guy went on stage and he did they do this deal of the month.
Mhm.
And they go and show whoever had the best deal. And I said, that's going to be me one day. And sure enough, 30 days later, I was up there doing deal of the day. I'd already done my first deal in my very first month.
Nice.
90 days later, those same people that were laughing at me and making fun of me, I was the one on stage teaching them.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it was just,
Yeah.
and I here's why I say this. It's not about me. Like,
Of course. Yeah.
get none of this twisted. It's like I'm just a normal guy. I'm just a normal guy. But there's little things we all can do that can catapult us. It's little things. It's not this like huge extraordinary thing that we need to do. It's micro things done every single day consistently can lead to an extraordinary life. So I went on, created a real estate company, did really, really well, did that for 2 years, took on a business partner, and everything was going good until I found out my business partner had embezzled $500,000 from our company.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I went from something to nothing, like below zero. So if you're listening to this and you look at your bank account and it says zero, you can go well below zero. Trust me. I learned that at
Yeah.
a very, very young age. And again, it brought another lesson. And there's something great about being at the bottom and nowhere to go but up.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
something so powerful because there's good in everything. There's two sides to everything.
Yeah.
So, here I am at the bottom again. Here we go. Let's start over. So I ended up, and at this time, I was drinking really heavy, eating fast food all the time. So I started letting my body go. I
Yeah.
didn't care about my health. Depression started kicking in. It was really a low spot. At this
Mhm.
time, I ended up getting a divorce. So it's not a good place I'm in. So, picture this. Here I am, quote unquote, thought I was the man, thought I was just this successful guy.
Mhm.
I'm divorced. I have kids from multiple women, and I'm below broke. So I'm like spiraling out of control,
Yeah.
letting my body go.
Yeah.
By this time, I had lost both my parents. I lost my dad when I was 20 because he was overweight. I lost my mom when I was 30. So just things are not going where the way it needs to
Wow.
go. I ended up getting with a friend. She got me started in a multi-level marketing company. It was actually, thankfully, it was a health and wellness company.
Okay.
And it was beautiful. So I got in phenomenal shape. And I found something I loved. I found something I enjoyed. And I enjoyed it because I lost my parents at such a young age.
Hmm.
20 years old, losing your parent, 30 years old, losing your mom. And this was stuff that could have been prevented. It could have been prevented if they would have known. And it's not like they didn't want to get healthy. It's not like they didn't try to get healthy. They just couldn't find something that worked for them. So when I learned how to take care of myself and when I started getting in better shape, people just naturally started coming up and asking me like, "Hey, what are you doing? How are you doing this? How are you doing that?" So, people started coming to me and I started helping people. And I've developed this love and passion for seeing people like transform, not just change, like transform.
Hmm.
Because what people have to understand is when you make this kind of change with your health, first of all, mentally you have to change.
Yeah.
So this seeps into all aspects of your life, your business life, your career, your relationships, your finances. Everything starts leveling up. You just become a better person. Once you fix your mindset, this is the order that I teach my clients. First, you fix your mindset, then you fix your body. Everything else takes root. Like everything else will take on. The main thing you need to get is your spiritual. That's the first thing, really.
Yeah.
Then your mindset. So that was going great. Again, worked my way back up. I got to the point where I was making about $15,000 a month. Everything was going good. But again, I just had one of these moments like I just didn't feel fulfilled again. Something was missing. I didn't know what it was. And around this time, this is when I ended up getting saved.
Oh, nice.
Which was life-changing.
Mhm.
So life-changing. I'm so grateful for God's grace. I'm so grateful for God's mercy. He was in my life the whole time. He was doing his thing. I wasn't paying him any attention.
Yeah.
I was avoiding him. But looking back at my life and everything I've been through, there's no doubt in my mind God was working.
Yeah.
But when I got saved, it was like one of those, if you know anything about the Bible, anybody listening to this, it was like one of those Saul moments where he's riding to Damascus to take out the Christians. It was literally like, it was that. Like one night I go to sleep and the next night I'm a completely different man. And at this time I had a girlfriend. I was living with her. And I had convinced her like, oh, we don't need any kids. We'll just, travel around the world and we don't need to get married. I didn't want to get married again. I was already divorced. I was like, we don't need to do that. We'll just live together. And as soon as I got saved, I kicked her out of my house. I said, look, you can't live here. We cannot do this together. So I put her back with her mom. We immediately ended up getting married. And I'm like, we got to start having kids. God said, be fruitful and multiply. So now keep in mind, my kids, I have older kids. I have a 22-year-old. I have a 21-year-old. I have a 15-year-old. And then with my wife, we have a 2-year-old son. And then my daughter just turned 1. And man, I'm so grateful for another opportunity to do things the right way.
Yeah.
I did my best with my older kids, but it wasn't the right way. A marriage is between a man and a woman, and that's when you're supposed to have your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to set an example, not just for my younger kids, but also my older kids. And I got married to my now beautiful, phenomenal wife. And the pivot that I actually ended up making was pretty much the same industry, same field, but just helping with men. I had this calling and I kind of resisted it at first. I'm not going to lie, because I was coaching men and women, but predominantly women. That was predominantly who I worked with. But I felt God tugging at me to know, you need to go find other men who are broken, and you need to help them. Because I understood, and I understand now, it's much more than just fitness. Fitness is just a gateway to get people in. And then it really allows me to start working on their mind, working on their heart, and developing them to really be the man that they were called to be the husband that they were called to be. Yeah. And I've been doing this, working with just men for the last 2 years. It's such a beautiful thing just to see men. It's cool to see anybody transform, but when you see a man that's hard and rugged and just lost, and you see him transform, and you see him start going to church, and you see his body changing and his mind changing and just all this stuff, it's an amazing thing. And that pretty much brings us to where we are now. Here we are today, sitting in front of you, Dr. B.
Man, what a story that I'm finding myself in your story, but not, you know, sometimes you say, well, parallel, I have some of the same experiences. But like for me, when I think of like you being, you know, adopted and being a drug baby, I adopted two boys that were drug babies from New York that we got that when they were 4, and now they're getting ready to turn 30 in May. And
Wow.
so I've been able to be that parent, you know, of two twin boys. One got a scholarship in track, and one went to cooking school. And you know, we saw him yesterday for the. I mean, just one he decided he's a rapper, and I mean, it's fun watching them grow up. I have 8 children now,
Wow.
and they're in, you know, a couple of them are adopted. They are all doing their thing. They're excited. We had now 16 grandkids, you know, and to
Wow.
see them being able to do stuff. And then I do your story, right? So, you know, I go to school on a track scholarship, and I end up being a PE teacher. And this last week or 2 weeks ago, you were talking about teachers and stuff. Like, you don't know if you make an impact, right? You just, you know, you do your thing. I was a football coach. I was a track coach. I do one of these podcasts, and the guy gets on, Kimio gets on, and goes, and I go, well, where are you from? He says, you know, I'm from, we were both in Southern California at the time. He goes, well, I went to Moreno Valley High School. I'm like, well, what year did you go to Moreno Valley High School? Because I was there in 1991. Like, I was the football coach. I was he's like, Coach Arnold. And then we go through talking about, you know, all the impact that things that I had said 30 some years ago that impacted his life. And you don't ever know. I mean, you just go, okay, you just move on.
Yeah.
And you became an entrepreneur and doing all the things that I do now. And just realizing that, you know, at some point I was a catalyst for somebody that was like you, that allowed me to grow. And now I'm still learning from people like yourself that are doing. And so one of the things that I noticed about you from your story that I think is when we say success leaves clues, everything you did, you said you enjoyed, right?
Yeah.
That had to come from your mindset before you knew what mindset was, that you figured out a way to find the best in everything that you did and actually found a way to enjoy it. Didn't matter what it was.
Yeah.
You figured out how to do that, which was cool, which brought me to some kind, you know, one of our pillars is, I'll finish this before I say the pillar is, last year I went to a meeting about a year and a half ago on trust. It was called the Trusted Edge, and it was a leadership meeting on being able to start with trust and begin everything being able to trust so you can create those relationships. And there's 400 people in the room. I look around the room, and there's, I don't know, 30 folks of color that are in the room. And I'm like, why is my community and the community that I work with so much not getting this incredible information? Why is all this research that's been done helping? When I think of, you know, if I think of folks of color and trusting, especially Black men, you know, if I think of our culture and our society, I don't know if there's too many of cultures that have less self-esteem and less trust than Black men, right? These are the things. So I come back and I said, okay, got it. You know, I feel you wanting me to work with people of color. And he says, no, I want you to work with Black men. And I'm like, well, I don't want to just work with Black men. He's like, no, you're going to work with Black men. And that's where Journey Your Freedom came from is, okay, there's a podcast component of it. There's a coaching component of it. We're taking 14 Black men to Alabama. We're going to start out in Birmingham. We're going to talk about story. Then we're going to go to Selma. Then we're going to go to Montgomery and go to the Equal Justice Museum and really work on coming back and starting transformational group with men that are doing the things that you're doing. So I'm like, oh man, this is like so incredible that we get to meet in this platform in this time to be able to do something that's going to be, you're not going anywhere because we're going to do something just amazing and incredible for Black men. But when I think about identity and I think about, you know, as one of the things is how do we find out who we are? You know, not just who we are, but whose we are. And how does that translate into different things that happen in your life? Because you could have went several different directions, you know, through the different person you didn't know who you were in high school. what do you think kept the identity? Was it mentors in your life? Was it different people who just fed into you? Obviously God was part of it and had a purpose for your life. What do you believe was some of the things that helped create the identity of the Tywin that you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to say, because I would have answered this differently if you would have asked me before I got saved. A
Mm.
little differently, not all the way differently. I 100% know God was involved because God can work through people. Now, the people that God worked through to me were coaches and teachers. That's almost predominantly where it came from. And that's why I stress how important coaches and the role they play in kids' lives.
Yeah.
And it's the teachers that go above and beyond. There's teachers, because it wasn't the stuff I learned in the class.
Yeah, never is.
It wasn't the stuff I learned about the sport. It was the little, again, finding your best, always finding the best in things. That came from my coach in football. That came from it. Now, it had nothing to do with running a play or anything like that, but it was just something that he instilled in my life. So it was these little nuggets that constantly were instilled by a handful of people that guided me in the right direction. And it was unbelievable. It's unbelievable the impact you can have in someone's life. You never know the impact that you're going to have in someone's life. This is why I'm a big fan of, man, just smile, like just a smile. Yeah. Just a smile can change someone's life, because you never know what they're going through. But anytime you have a chance to have a conversation with someone, it's not really about you. Just find out a little bit about them. And then you never know what void you might be able to fill. But it was definitely teachers and coaches that did it for me.
Oh, that's so cool. I want to talk to you about being a dad. And you kind of talked about, you have kids and you made that pivotal decision to, and you don't know what could happen, right? I mean, we never know. I mean, you're a Division I player. That means you're probably a pretty good athlete. And you made a decision that your kids were more important than whatever else it is that you were doing in life at that point. And one of the things that's been a constant theme in our show is about being a parent and how much it's super important for every child to have a dad. I mean, there's nothing more important, other than having a mom and a dad that care about them and love them. But there's something about being a dad that takes, when you get to be a dad and you take that on as a priority, it changes who you are.
Yes.
And what you're able to do and the preciousness of, okay, now I have this responsibility of taking care of somebody. I have this responsibility of protecting this person. I have this responsibility of being there for them. I don't think either of us become the people that we are without that process. So maybe talk to me a little bit about your experience of being dad.
Yeah, awesome. So it's been different over the years. Like I said, I had my first son. I was 17 years old, and I love my kids. My kids are absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of them. I had my first child, my first son at 17, my daughter right after the year later. And at that point, my main focus was just to provide financially. So in my head at that time, my role as a father was to provide financially. That's only one part of the job as a father.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to learn, the other parts of being a father. Because in my home growing up, that's predominantly what my dad did. He was the breadwinner. He brought home the money. That was his main role. That's just how my household was. And then when, I had my third child, things were a little different. At this time I was married and I was like, oh, there's other parts to this. Because I want to be clear, when I first started, I was all over the place. I was all over the place with women and this and that. I was just, and I'm not proud of this, but I just want to be genuine and authentic. And it wasn't till, when I was married and I had that somewhat sense of a home, I started learning, okay, there's other parts of this, the nurturing part. Okay, I'm here to lead this kid. I'm here to lead this child. And then so over the years it progressed And then when I got remarried, and really when I found God, that's when I really understood it, because I had the blueprint for it, and it was the Bible. It tells me exactly what I need to do, who I need to be, how I need to show up, and I know if I miss the mark or hit the mark. So for me, that was a pivotal point in, okay, this is how, not only how to be a father, because before you can be a father, you first have to be a man. And then once you're a man, then you can be a father. And I think a lot of times, at least for me, I had that twisted. I didn't understand really what a man was. I didn't understand what a man's responsibility was, and roles, responsibilities. And once I understood that, then it really allowed me to step into the man and be the father that I needed to be. So yeah, and now it's just such a beautiful thing. It's such a, man, it's a lucky it's a lucky role we get to put. It's a huge responsibility, that God gives us. But I'm thankful for it every day. I'm so thankful for it every day.
Yes. Now you make it sound like it was easy all the time. Like I just, I just did what I did. Make sure everybody here knows that, raising children is not, there are mistakes that are made. And
Oh, tons of mistakes. You make tons of mistakes. I mean, half the time I feel like I'm making mistakes. I think for me, and I would, for any, especially any young men listening this, and I stress this because I wish someone would have stressed it to me.
okay.
Because again, I was just running around, just doing my thing, rock star status. The importance of finding a good woman, making that woman your wife, and that's who you have your kids with. And I'll tell you exactly why. The hardest thing that I've ever dealt with in my life, the by far the most pain, the most problems, like the most, you name it, was child support.
Mm.
That was the worst thing I've ever dealt with in my life. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So that was the hardest thing I've had to deal with. I don't wish that on anybody. But then, just trying to figure it out. Like you said, you're responsible for another living human being. And it's definitely ups and downs, and you figure it out. But at the end of the day, you fall down, you wipe yourself off. And if you were wrong, you admit you're wrong.
Yeah.
So it's a forever, the process never finishes.
Mm-hmm.
It's never done. You're never, okay, I got it. I'm a great parent now. No, I'm probably going to look back 5 years from now and be like, what was I thinking? Why would you do that? But I think that's a beautiful thing about the journey of life that we all get to go through, is learning along the way. And it's okay to make mistakes. Because I want to be very clear. Along the way, I've made lots of mistakes. I probably made way more mistakes than probably most people listening to this. But that's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you get better. I encourage everybody to make mistakes and make them fast.
Yeah.
And then learn from them.
You learn from them, and that's the key, is learning from them. One more in this line of question. One more question I had, because I think you have a perspective that a lot of men have, and then some men don't. But for the ones who do, is fighting through. You mentioned child support, and along the way that is being hard for folks. But also, just sometimes there's women that make it hard because they're upset and they're angry for you to interact with your kids. And sometimes, men give up. They like, this isn't worth going through all this. I'll figure out how to get some money to them. I'll figure out how to, just be there when I can. And because they don't want to deal with the drama of the angry other parent. How, like, for folks that are listening, how worth it is the fight to continue to do it no matter what? And then, what good comes from that, or what's needed for the kids? I mean, I just want you to kind of talk about a little bit.
Yeah, I would first of all say this, because I definitely went through that stage, and it's not that the providing for a child, like okay, yes, it costs money to raise a child, and it gets difficult at times, but when you're with that person, you don't get your license suspended. You don't get thrown in jail. All these things don't happen to you. You just downsize. You're like, okay, well, we can't go out. We can't spend as much. We whatever. You just cut back a little bit. Child support's not like that. They don't care what you're going through. They don't care what your problems is. They don't care if you got a house over your head. They don't care about any of that. So it goes out the window. So I remember I was in a place where, this is when I was selling cars, and I had a really good commission month, and I was like, okay, I'm finally going to be able to get caught up on my bills, and it's going to be great. It was supposed to be a couple $1,000 check. I got an $87 check. It's supposed to be like a $3,000 or $4,000 check, $87. And I remember again, called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm leaving. I don't know what country I'm going to, but I'm just going to go to some country and work under the table because I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't even survive myself. And it's not that I didn't want to take care of my kids, but life happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And my mom, in her typical way, she said, you've always figured it out. Figure this out, and hung up the phone. And then at that point, I made a decision. I was like, okay, I can go cry in the corner, or I can put on my big boy pants and figure this out. And I've just done that all along the way. You just figure it out. I've just always had that mindset of like, just figure it out. So whatever you're going through, you can get past it, because the reward for just being able to be around your kids and seeing them smile and seeing them grow up and seeing you and them, it's so worth it. It's so worth any drama that you got going on. Just ignore that. Just ignore that, because that can hinder your relationship. It never hindered my relationship with my kids, but I had a sense of almost resentment, not necessarily for my kids, but there was just this resentment in it. Like, why are you making this so hard? And it wasn't until I let that go and be like, just let her be. Just let her be angry. Because that was the only thing that they had on me, was that. So they literally would hang that over me like, well, you can't go anywhere. You still owe me money. Well, not no more. Yeah. So it's so worth it.
Oh, cool. Thank you for sharing that, because I know that's it happens more than it doesn't,
Yeah.
and it sometimes it's so hard. And ultimately the kids end up losing when it falls apart, to the point where, had you went to another country, then what, how do your kids then not have, a dad? And so fighting for it is terrible as it is, so worth it.
It's so important. And like you said, it's very, very common, especially among African-American men. It's just extremely common. And we don't know, no one ever talks about it. Now, you'll hear the mom side a lot. You hear that all the time. Oh, deadbeat dad, this and that. You hear that all the time. But you never get to hear the other side of it. And a lot of times, it's not a deadbeat dad. A lot of times, it's not that. It's just people fall on tough times. And I don't care. This is my belief. You should never not be able to see your kids. It just should not even be an option, and then I think a lot of people get tied up. A lot of men get tied up in, well, what am I sending money for? I can't even see my kid. And it just creates this friction, and it shouldn't be that way. It just shouldn't. So,
yeah. And like you said, how important it is to be able to, no matter what, they're your kids.
Yeah.
And you should be able to see them. And I know that's the carrot that sometimes is, that gets dangled, or the thing that becomes the struggle in between. So thank you for sharing that. I know health is your deal, right? So let's talk about health a little bit. Let's talk about, that the average man lives to 72, and Black man anyways. What can we do? What are the things that, not just physically, but mentally, that we need to work on, so that doesn't happen? My dad just is getting ready to turn 86 next month.
Wow.
He's running track meets, and he's excited, and I see the joy in everything he's done. And I think that's a lot of it, because I think what kills us sometimes is our state of mind and our mindset, like you said before. But what are some things that, if you were to give us some advice right now and say, this is what you need to start doing, what would that look like?
You know what? I think a lot of people are a lot closer to having success than they actually think they are. I'll start by saying that, because when it seems so far, maybe you're not in the shape that you want to be, and it's been a long time since you had. It seems so far away. It seems so hard. You probably tried a lot of different things. Well, it's not as hard as you think. But the first thing you need to do is you need to sit down and do an honest evaluation of where you actually are, and be honest with yourself. Because we live in a world today where people are not honest with people. Like people will tell, oh, you're fine. You know, you look great how you are. Well, yeah, you might, but you could have a heart attack any day. You maybe, but you got diabetes. You have high blood pressure. So you're sitting down and having an honest conversation with yourself about where you are and who you want to be, because there's a difference. And then once you have that conversation with yourself about where you are and you're honest, get clear on where you want to go. I mean, very clear. You can't just say, I want to lose weight. That's not enough. You lose a pound, you lost weight, you won. No, you need to get very specific on what you want, but not just what you want. Why do you want it? So for instance, if someone said, oh, I want to lose 50 pounds, great. There's no motivation in that. No guy wakes up in the morning is like, oh, I can't wait to get on the scale and see the scale say 50 pounds less. No, there's a reason you want to do that. I don't know what that reason is. It's different for everybody. Maybe some people feel that when they lose 50 pounds, they're going to get the attention that they wanted. Maybe their sex life isn't where they want, and that they think that's going to spark. There's some reason. You have to attach emotion to it. When you attach emotion to what you want, so if you know where you are, and if you know what you want, and there's emotion attached to it, humans are smart. We'll figure out how to do it. You'll figure out, because there's no shortage of information. The information is everywhere. The only thing that's missing is the implementation. That's what people are missing. Right? It's not information. It's out there. But a great start is knowing actually where you are, actually where you want to be, create the emotion to make it happen. And I promise you, you will figure the rest out. You will figure everything out, because let's face it, losing weight is not that complicated. We all know what you have to do. What do you have to do? Eat less and move more. It's not that complicated. But it's these foundational pillars that a lot of people skip over. It starts up here. It's the 6 inches between your brain that's giving you, the 6 inches between your ears is giving you the most problems.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where you need to hunker in. But everybody wants to skip that step. Everyone wants to do the sexy stuff. Like, oh, I want to go get the new gym clothes and the new gym membership. And you're not going to stay consistent.
No.
You know, but if you have something in the morning that wakes you up and drives you and something that you're moving towards, we're built to go out and conquer. Like, we want to win. It's built into our DNA. So we were built for this. But you got to prime your engine first and get ready. And then the last thing I would say, get around other people who are going in the same direction of you. Yes. Proximity is huge.
Yes.
If all your friends are overweight and they're drinking and eating crazy stuff, and look, the fastest way to get in shape is go hang around fit people.
Mm-hmm.
Just is. You know?
Wow. Yeah, no, that's, you were so right. You think of, you know, like right now I'm trying to, you know, I was an athlete, you know, and walking and running 3 miles every day. I don't want to get up in the morning every day and walk 3 miles, but I also don't want to die in 10 years. Right. Yeah. So it's like, what is more important? And then when I start thinking about who I get to serve when I'm healthy, because when I feel bad, I don't want to go outside. I don't want to do stuff. I don't want to hang out with people. I want to feel good about what I'm doing. And so if it takes me 3 miles every single day, now I get an hour to work on other stuff, because it's a thing that I can listen to things and work on me and who I am and who I can become. So that works out. But I think there's a mindset portion of this too, the mental health side of it, that we're not too healthy with. And so how have you had to deal with the desire and the want, or the mental health side of it, that when you're sad or you're depressed, or, you know, it doesn't sound like there's too many times you've been figured out ways to enjoy everything. But I know I'm not saying this is what you went through, but you work with people all the time that are having issues with that intrinsic, I got to get up and do it. What do you say to them as you're coaching them and helping them?
And I want to make sure your listeners are clear. The person you hear talking to you today is a completely different person than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yes.
So I had the like, trust me, I've had the struggles. Yes. Some of the situations, how I describe them now is not how I would have described them then. Mm-hmm. And this just shows, like, this is the power of, like, getting your mind right. Yes. This is literally 15 years of personal development, never missing a day. I'm more consistent with my personal development than I am my workouts. And I'm pretty consistent on my workouts. So it's just, if there's one thing you walk away from this podcast is dive into personal development, work on yourself. That's the key. Like, you have to become the person that's deserving of whatever it is you're going after. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's career, the relationship you want. Like, if you don't become that person, if by some means you happen to get it, you're going to lose it. Yeah. This happens when people win the lottery. They'll win $20 million and in 2 years be broke. How can someone win 20 million? Now, their whole life, they survived off $30,000 a year. They win 20 million and it's gone in 2 years. Why? Because they weren't a millionaire. The money's not what makes a millionaire. Millionaire is here, right? It starts first in your mind. It's the same thing with your health. Like, so when I'll see people, once it clicks, I know it's like, oh, it clicked with them. We just got to wait time. We just have to wait for the gestation period to pass. Everything has a gestation period, right? When you're having a baby, it takes 9 months, right? So all of these things have gestation period. The same thing with your fitness journey. The same thing with getting in health. And that's something to be excited about. That's something to wake up. Like, when you know you're on the right path, it's a beautiful thing. So a lot of times with my clients, they may not see the road in front of them, but I know they're doing the work because I give them the daily habits and daily activity that they need to do. And as long as they do those daily habits and activities, we gravy. It's just time. So a lot of times when my clients will come to me and they're frustrated and maybe it's not working, it's just boom. They have to borrow my belief at first.
Yes.
But after a while, they just don't borrow the belief. They start taking a little bit and putting it in their pocket. They take a little bit more and put it in their pocket. And next thing you know, all the belief that I had from the very beginning of them, eventually they get it. And then they no longer need me. And that's a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing seeing it happen.
Man, it is so good. The thing that you said that just reminds me of the problem with our social media system, I guess, or what we watch, is we're seeing finished products all the time. We're seeing people's best lives all the time. Yes. We're seeing what they've done to go through, and we think, hey, because we're an instant society, if I do what they did for 3 days, then I'm going to get the results that they got after 3 days. Yeah. Well, no, they've been doing it for 15 years, and you want it to happen in 30 days. Yeah. And it's not going to. You have to become that person that you need to be, right? In order
the faster you become that person, the faster it will happen.
Absolutely. Okay, so we got about a few minutes left. We talked about some amazing things today. What would be one thing that you wanted to make sure that we talk about that we didn't get to, or that you just wanted to share with everybody?
I think for me, probably just because this was something that I was never for at the beginning. Like marriage, I wasn't for it. Like my first marriage, I kind of got married because it was just like, okay, well, she says we're supposed to do this, and I'm sick of her asking me, so let's just do this. It's sad to say that, but it was something that wasn't even on my mind. And here's why: every single person I knew at that point, if they were married, they were either divorced, number one, or if they were married, they weren't happy. I didn't know one single person that had a happy marriage. So I'm like, why would I do that? My brothers used to complain about their marriage. It was just, that's all I knew. But for any man watching this or listening to this, I can't stress what finding a good woman, a good wife, how that can level up your life. Like, you can be successful without a wife. You can. But if you have a wife, a good wife, she will take you to the next level. She will elevate you to another level. And I say that because I see this culture kind of being built of men who they don't want to get married, or they think it's the woman's going to take everything I got. Look, it's not like that. I mean, it can be like that, but if you choose wisely, right? If you choose correctly for the right reason, it's just a beautiful thing. So I think that's one thing that I would want to probably leave people with, especially men, because the world just has this view of marriage like it's this horrible thing, and it's a beautiful thing that will level you up like nothing else. So,
Yeah, this is kind of good woman. Yes, you got two guys here that love and cherish and would do anything for their wives. And please, if you need to contact us, figure out a way to do it, because we will get you around some folks that
Yes.
love and can be super happy, because it is everything. Oh man, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being part of the podcast today. It has been one of my favorite shows that we've done. Just because you're authentic, you're real, you tell it like it is. And I think the folks that listen to this will be able to say, hey, I was like a part of your life at some point,
Yeah.
and look where he's at now. And I can be there too. So again, thank you for do whatever the YouTube things is you do to subscribe. I promise you, if you start listening to these, you're going to find somebody who's doing what you want to do and can tell you how to do it, and move it even further. And so thanks for being part of the show. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for just being who you are. Hey, don't forget, you are God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. And so please allow him to do it. And we will talk to you on the next one. Tywin, just stay on just for a second so that we can talk about how we can do some more things together, because this is just the beginning, not only for him and I, but for you as listeners as well. So you guys have a wonderful, just amazing, incredible day, and we'll talk to you on the next one.